Shalom, dear friends. The episode of the transfiguration of Jesus in chapter 17 underlines the identity of Jesus as the Son of God. This is actually the reiteration of the divine proclamation that took place at the baptism of Jesus. This narrative of the transfiguration is very rich in biblical symbolism. We will read the text. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain. In Exodus, we were told that after Moses went up to Mount Sinai, for 6 days he was covered by clouds, and on the seventh day Yahweh called from the clouds, and this transfiguration takes place 6 days after the events that we described yesterday. Reference to Peter, John and James. They form the inner circle of the 12 who are privileged to witness some of the important events in the life of Jesus, like the agony at Gethsemane. The mountain is a favorite theme in Matthew. This is the place of divine revelation where God encounters people. The evangelists do not give us the name of the mountain, but we can infer that it's Mount Hermon, which is 9,000 feet above the sea level and very close to Caesarea Philippi, although the traditions tell us that Jesus transfigured on Mount Tabor or Tabor. The brilliance of his face and clothing could recall Moses after his encounter with God on Mount Sinai. Moses and Elijah, mentioned in the story, represent the law and the prophets, and these are the only two people who encountered God on the mount. Moses on Mount Sinai and Elijah on Mount Horeb. And according to tradition, both of them were taken up into heaven, and the biblical text tells us that they will be coming back once again. So Jesus is now superior to Moses and Elijah because they come to witness to Jesus. Once again, we notice that Peter is the spokesperson and he addresses Jesus as Kyrie, Lord, the expression of a believer. The voice from the cloud repeats exactly the same words that we heard at the baptism of Jesus. Jesus is both the Son of God and the servant. And this revelation is the high point of this narrative, because it concludes by saying, listen to him. In Deuteronomy chapter 18:15, Moses said, Lord will send you another prophet and listen to him. And Moses is now witnessing to Jesus. Listen to him. The text that follows from verse 14 is a description about the power of little faith. The tragic situation of a child who suffers due to epilepsy becomes an occasion for Jesus to further teach on discipleship. Matthew focuses on the posture of this father. It tells us he went down on his knees before him, and his address to Jesus as Kyrie, Lord, and his request Lord, take pity on my son. So the word Lord and the posture and the request all show that Jesus is understood as God, and this person is a true believer in the divinity of Jesus. And Jesus had actually given authority and power to his disciples to cure and to exorcise. And here the disciples are not able to cure this child. So Jesus reprimands the lack of faith of the disciples, and the failure of the disciple is a recurring theme in the section that we are dealing. The text that follows from verse 22 is the second passion prediction, which is also the shortest, and there we find a progressive comprehension and understanding of the disciples with regard to Jesus, because here the reaction of the disciples is not a denial but an overwhelming grief. That takes us to the last part of the chapter, which is unique to Matthew. The issue is the payment of an annual tax of half a shekel that was obligatory for the maintenance of the temple. And this is obligatory for all Jewish males between the age of 20 and 50. And this tax served for the upkeep of the temple and as a sign of solidarity among the Jews both in Israel and those in diaspora. At the time of Jesus, the priest and some of the rabbis felt that they were exempted from paying the tax to the temple. The fact that the question was asked to Peter shows once again his privileged position among the 12, and he is the spokesperson or the PRO of the apostles. And once back home, Jesus confronts Peter with a parable about the legality of paying the tax. He said, should the sons of earthly kings pay the tax to the king? The answer is no. So, if the sons of the kings are not obliged to pay, definitely Jesus need not pay, because he is the real Son of God. At least twice at the baptism and at the transfiguration it was proclaimed publicly. However, Jesus forgoes the right in order to avoid causing scandal or an offense. So Peter is asked to pay the tax both for himself and for Jesus. After the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, Romans diverted the temple tax for the upkeep of the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus in Rome. So the context of Matthew's community is important. The Jewish Christians who felt that they need not pay the tax to the temple are confronted with this issue, that the story is both to underline the privileged position of Peter and to tell the disciples not to cause scandal, a theme that will be taken up prominently in the coming chapter. God bless you.